There's a very interesting story about this, as a matter of fact. Sheikh Mohammed Syed Tantawi is the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar University. Last year, after, well, I guess it's 2 years ago now, after September 11th, he said, terrorism is a disease and Islam forbids the killing of innocent civilians. The BBC quoted him in an article that called him the highest spiritual authority for the world's 1 billion Sunni Muslims. And George Bush went to the United Nations and quoted him. Then, the same Sheikh Tantawi, last spring, said, he stirred up some trouble about the suicide bombings because he originally came out against them, and that again made the headlines. The New York Times did a long story on Al-Azhar. Moderate Muslims fear their messages being ignored, saying that Al-Azhar has sought to advise Muslims around the world that those who kill in the name of Islam are nothing more than heretics. It has sought to guide and to reassure Westerners against any clash of civilizations. It said, in conversations at the graceful Al-Azhar structure known as the House of the Sheikh, clerks sitting behind Arabic-style windows and elegant carvings have cast themselves again and again as the guides to a gentle Islam. Well, once again, in the interests of trying to point out the challenges that we face in the contemporary world, Sheikh Tantawi last spring reversed himself about the suicide bombings and said that the killing of women, children, and teenagers was in accordance with Islamic law and was actually the Islamic commandment. But then you didn't hear the BBC calling him the highest spiritual authority for the world's 1 billion Sunni Muslims, or the New York Times writing about how Al-Azhar is struggling to present a gentle Islam. But this makes the situation very difficult, because these are supposed to be the people who are on our side. This is the guy that George Bush quoted. But unfortunately, the situation is simply not that simple. A few more things that I need to point out. What I've just been telling you about Sheikh Tantawi and Al-Azhar, you should remember in light of talk about the Wahhabi movement in Saudi Arabia. You hear a lot about the Wahhabis, and there is a book out now, as a matter of fact, that argues that the Wahhabi movement is actually responsible for the extremism in Islam and has spread this extremism all over the world, but that actually they represent a tiny minority of Muslims. And if the Wahhabis were stamped out, they're the regime in control of Saudi Arabia, then presumably our troubles would be over. But what I just quoted to you about Al-Azhar has nothing to do with the Wahhabis. Sheikh Mohammed Syed Tantawi is not a Wahhabi, and the people who produced this book are not Wahhabis. This book has in it instructions about jihad and about waging war against non-Muslims. Quoting the Prophet Muhammad, I have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Perform the prayer and pay zakat, that's paying alms. If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me, except for the rights of Islam over them. So in other words, if they don't say it, they haven't saved their blood and possessions from him. But the point is that this is not a book produced by a lunatic fringe. This book is produced by the oldest Islamic university in the world, by a tremendously respected organization, and it also carries endorsements from the president of the International Institute of Islamic Thought, from the Grand Mufti of the Jordanian Armed Forces, and from the Grand Imam of the Mosque of Darwish Pasha in Damascus. So you have Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And then it begins to look like, well, if these people are lining up against this, then who's the mainstream and who's the fringe? Another Saudi preacher, a couple Fridays ago, Sheikh Mohammed Saleh al-Munajid, said, Muslims must educate their children to jihad. This is the greatest benefit of today's situation, educating the children to jihad and to hatred of Jews, Christians, and infidels. All right? Same thing. Speaking about the Jews, Sheikh Sultan al-Duwaid and another mosque in Saudi Arabia calls them brothers of apes and pigs. Now that's nasty language, right? But he's actually referring to the second surah of the Quran, verse 65, which says that Allah changed the Jews into detested apes. And so these brothers of apes and pigs are tormenting 1 billion Muslims. There's no other way, O Muslims, but restoring the missing precept, jihad for the sake. Now, it is also a fact that the Saudi imams who preach this are part of a government structure, while ostensibly our ally is the primary financier of mosques in the United States. And so, are we to believe that if the money trail is going in this direction, that none of the ideas are also following? Are we to believe that that the ordinary good American Muslim who wants to be a good American and so on that George Bush invoked, and there are many. The problem is, are we to believe that he's going to go into his mosque on Friday and not hear this same kind of thing? Certainly won't hear it everywhere, but if the money is all coming from the people who are saying this, why are they going to say anything different?